Yeah. Okay. So welcome all. The speaker, Professor Sahasrabudhe, the director of IIT Delhi, Professor Ram Gopal Rao, and Deputy Director of Strategy and Planning, Professor Ashok K. Ganguly, and all of you in the audience there. I am very happy to welcome you for the first lecture of the NEP 2020 series that IIT Delhi is organizing. And in the past too, from the later half of the year 2020, IIT Delhi had organized a number of events, including lectures, panel discussions around various aspects of the NEP 2020 policy. And we plan to continue with this practice in the year 2022 as well. Now, this exercise we feel is very critical since we are living in very hard and unpredictable times when every aspect of our lives, including and most significantly, our education has been affected drastically because of the pandemic. And these are changes, there have been changes that we did not foresee as educators and also policymakers. We did not foresee would affect our education. And currently, from where we stand, we see that every aspect of education, including our classroom teaching, the way we conduct our labs, or how we do our research and do our supervision has been affected because of the pandemic. So it is from this perspective as well that IIT Delhi wants to revisit some of the guidelines of the NEP 2020 policy and gauge the best practices that one can adopt so as to mitigate the adverse effects that the pandemic may leave behind on education. So it is indeed a privilege to have Professor Sahasrabudhe be the first speaker of the NEP 2020 series. He, as all of you know, has been very optimistic about the guidelines presented in the NEP 2020 policy from the very beginning. And we are very grateful that he accepted our invitation to speak to us about the NEP 2020 policy, despite his very hectic schedule. So without further ado, I will now begin the actual proceedings. And for that, I will first invite Professor Ram Gopal Rao to address the audience here.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Pita Chandra. Welcome, Professor. The implementation of the new education policy, and so this committee looks at all the issues with the implementation of the multiple aspects of NEP, and we are slowly now trying to understand them, and many of these in a way we have already taken care of, but there are many other things where we need to still implement, which we need to still implement. One of the things that has definitely happened is this multidisciplinarity, which NEP talks about. IIT Delhi now, all the new academic units that we have started, they're all multidisciplinary, whether it's Department of Design or the School of Public Policy or School of Interdisciplinary Research, even the Department of Material Science and Engineering. I think many of these units now are coming up very well and are making the institute in a way, move away from just the core engineering and also have all of these other disciplines become visible and getting integrated with the engineering domain. And the internationalization also is something that we have taken very seriously, which is one of the NEP recommendations. In fact, we have two joint PhD programs now, one with the University of Queensland in Australia, the other is with NCTU in Taiwan. The Australia program is doing very well. In fact, we should be touching 100 joint PhD students with University of Queensland in another few months' time. So that started just 2.5 years ago. Now is touching 100 student mark. The NCTU in Taiwan is also going very well. That also we are scaling up now. And the credit bank thing we are looking at, and also this multi-entry, multi-exit kind of options for IITs is also something which we are seriously looking at right now. So we have an exit policy which we are trying to see if we can further strengthen that. The entry level also we are trying to see if we can have more levels of entry. So that's also something that is being looked at. And of course, the other aspects of NEP, the National Research Foundation, which we are keenly looking forward to, and even the autonomy that NEP talks about in great detail is also something which we are looking forward to. I think overall we think NEP is a game changer for higher education and for that matter all education in the country. And IIT Delhi will do its part in its implementation, in spreading awareness about this, and also leading some of these initiatives by example. Thank you very much for being with us, and thank you, Professor Sahasrabudhe, for accepting our invitation.
Thank you, Professor Ramgopal Rao. Professor Ganguly, I invite you to introduce the speaker.
Yeah, good afternoon. So it's my pleasant duty to invite Professor Anil Sahasrabudhe, who is currently the chairman of the All India Council for Technical Education. He has brought in significant reforms in technical education at AICTE, which include mandatory student induction and internship, creating India's first ever MOOC platform, SWAYAM. He has held several important academic research and administrative positions prior to joining AICTE. I believe he started from NERIST and then he was professor at IIT Guwahati in the Mechanical Engineering Department and then Director, College of Engineering, Pune. And Professor Sahasrabudhe actually graduated from BVB College of Engineering and Technology, Hubli in Dharwad, and then came to University of Science, where actually I overlapped with him for nearly 6 years. And on a personal basis, that's why I went back. We actually submitted our thesis in 1989. He was in the lab of very famous Professor Munjal, who is renowned for sound acoustics, especially aeroacoustics. And he did his thesis on an efficient three-dimensional finite element analysis of simple and extended tube expansion. And I don't know whether he remembers that we gave several lectures together in the lecture hall complex opposite to the biochemistry department. Many common friends we have. So very nice on a personal note. Welcome, Professor Sahasrabudhe, and to your talk, NEP 2020 Opportunities to Excel.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Ashok Ganguly. I still remember those days, very refreshing in Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. Professor Ramgopal Rao, Director of IIT Delhi. I am seeing here Professor Arun Kumar Grover and many other stalwarts in education, those who were vice chancellors and other academicians, faculty and students of not only IIT Delhi, but many other colleges and institutions in the country who have joined in an online mode, maybe some of them on YouTube. My warm greetings and good afternoon to all of you. It's a very interesting time that the new education policy 2020, which has come in at a time when all the countries of the world, including India, are passing through a crisis in terms of COVID pandemic. And just now, while introducing in the beginning, talked about uncertain world. And in management, in the late 80s, there was a famous term which became popular, was called the VUCA world. Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And a lot of economic downturns, ups and downs were all related with this VUCA world. But in the pandemic, which came uninvited, of course, no one wanted this pandemic, but having got it, we have to go through this crisis as effectively, as positively, as efficiently as possible. And during this time itself, we have got this new national education policy. So I'm reversing the alphabets of the VUCA world, VUCA, and starting from the reverse end, if you accept that such things are likely to happen. This is not the first case. 100 years back, there was another pandemic, and sometime later, something else will happen. So if we accept and change our attitude, and then the complexity is certainly there, but if we collaborate and cooperate, and in the form of that, whatever uncertainty word U is there, a letter U is there, we are united in our approach, and with untiring effort, that word volatile is already volatile, it will evaporate and we will turn victorious. And that's what this pandemic showed as far as India is concerned. And this particular policy which has come is exactly doing all that what we need to do for transforming India. And that's why people are calling it as a game-changing policy, or we also call it as a transformative policy, which we are all looking forward to in order that we cross over and come to a level where we are in a position to transform our India into a new India, which often our Prime Minister talks about. So I'm starting with a PowerPoint presentation, and in between, if you have queries, you note down those points, and we will have half an hour question answer session also at the end. So this lecture series, which IIT is doing for this current year in an online mode, had it been no pandemic, we would have been probably in an auditorium talking about it. So certainly online has become the order of the day. Since pandemic, we all started looking at the education itself in terms of the online education. The policy in its very first paragraph, drafted by none other than Dr. Kasturi Rangan as the chair and many other stalwarts in the committee, they have given in a nutshell what is education all about. Education is fundamental for achieving full human potential, developing an equitable and just society, and promoting national development. I think there are three fundamental pillars on which the entire policy rests. It is for achieving full human potential. Each one of us is born with some talent, some intrinsic quality. How do we explore it? How do we develop it? How do we mentor it? How do we make it happen in a way that the full human potential is going to be achieved? That is the part of education. So education has to look at every candidate as a different, diverse entity, and how do we promote that particular individual is the job of the education. It also has to take care of equitable and just society creation, because in a country where there are so much diversities in terms of geography, in terms of climate, in terms of textile and cloths that we wear, in terms of food habits, in terms of our education, in terms of we live in rural area, tribal area, or in the cities or metros. So creating or developing an equitable and just society must be one of the tenets of education. Thirdly, it all should lead to national development, and that's what is the role of education all about. And this is fundamentally not very different from what actually India or the Bharat practiced for ages. Look at our ancient education system, right from Vedic times, the Gurukulas, where students were getting to explore full human potential, and there was no dearth of allowing anyone for getting education as and when they are interested. I think in between we slipped, that's a different matter. But if you go back to the Vedic times, whether it is women or from any other caste, everyone was asked or permitted to take education of his or her choice. And there were great women sages whose names, if you Google, you will find out. And therefore, even the text of Mahabharata and the Ramayana, those who have written it, they are from what location, what category, you can look at it and you will understand that education was for everyone. And that is what is equitable and just society formation. We had also great universities of the world, Takshila, Nalanda, and 17 others, and exclusive women university as well. In an era when from 600 BC to 1200 AD, if there were rankings of the global universities, there were no universities elsewhere, and all the ranks would have got to India itself. And from then on to the great sage Swami Vivekananda, who spoke in the Chicago address, and subsequently, while traveling, not subsequently, Indian Institute of Science, about which Professor Ashok Ganguly mentioned in the beginning, is the creation of the blessings of Swami Vivekananda, who motivated Tatas to establish an Institute of Excellence in Science in Bangalore. I think that is what is the introduction to the new education policy with its historical perspective. This also continues with a profound wisdom in its next statement in the introduction itself that we must provide universal access to quality education to everyone, including for developing leadership at the global stage in terms of economic growth, social justice, equality. Of course, the word environment is not mentioned here, but subsequently later, taking care of sustainable development goals, scientific advancement, national integration, and also cultural preservation. I think it looks very heavily loaded, but it is profound wisdom that has been depicted in the very beginning of the policy itself, in the introduction part of it. And beyond that, the whole thing was very voluminous, but subsequently it was reduced to around 70 pages. There are 27 chapters in the policy document. First 8 on school education, next 11 on higher education, then 5 areas of focus, and last 3 about implementation, finances, and related other activities related with the policy. Now, although most of the audience today were sitting here on this particular platform online, they are all from higher education sector, it is very important to link it with the school education to understand the nuances of the policy and why it is formulated in a manner that it is done. It talks about moving away from the present 10+2 school system to a new system of 5+3+3+4 system. That means instead of 12 years of education, it talks about 15 years of education. And the starting point is 3 years instead of 6 years. So there is an early childhood education beginning at the age of 3. It does exist in different parts of the country even today, but it's absolutely in an informal way. Maybe in cities, it is in the form of nursery, lower KG, upper KG, different terminologies are used. And in villages and rural areas, we see it called as Balwadi, Anganwadi, and children at that age go to the school in a very informal manner, both sides. Maybe somewhere some teaching learning takes place, otherwise they play games, enjoy, and then go back. So the formalization of that 3 years is also talked about, and that's why 10+2 is made 5, 3, 3, 4. And these significant years are to be very clearly disseminated, or what we say, seen in different perspectives. The first 5 years are early childhood care plus foundational literacy and numeracy. So at the end of those 5 years, that means at the age of 8, a child must be proficient in reading, writing, that is in terms of literacy, in terms of numeracy, arithmetic, what we famously earlier used to call 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. All of that should be at the level of that child at that age, they must be able to do it. But all that through not very rigorous pressure or tension-based education, but in terms of fun and activity-based learning. And the pedagogy has to be changed, especially at the first 5 years. That is in terms of stories, games, it may be videos, it could be watching of certain elements, going into the nature, doing some activity in the garden, maybe even agricultural activity. You watch many things, do many things in a fun-oriented way, playing with toys and games, and learn all those things which you require to do in a foundational one. That means the mother tongue through which you have studied in the or learned a language at home, the same thing should be continued in the first 5 years with stories and games, and thereby, along with that, if another language is also taught. We all talked about 3 language formula earlier. Why 3 language? In fact, children at that age can learn even 5 to 6 languages very easily if they are not forced to write or read. They are only told stories. They will understand, because most of the words are having the basis as Sanskrit. So from one sentence of one language to another sentence in another language, with some words being common, students will appreciate, learn any number of languages very easily at that age. So actually learning of languages is also a skill, and which will happen almost automatically if it is fun and activity based. Followed by that at the age of 6, that means after those 5 plus 3 years of education, where you have learned enough of literacy, numeracy, mathematics, you will get into vocational or skill education. Very simple skills. maybe motor skills are developed, your hands and legs, etc. The effective use of them on one side, or also some brain teasers, some kind of skills of that nature, to even working with hands in terms of taking care of a plant or seeding something. All of this, children will start learning at the age of 8 in the class 6 of that 5+3 system, and subsequently in those 3 years they will get expertise in 1 or 2 skills. Then comes the last phase of 4 years, which is going to be not categorized or classified as today in the after 10 standard. Students either go to science or commerce or arts or some other streams like ITI or something like this after 10 standard. But here in the last 4 years, that is at the age of 14 to 18, children will have no classification as science, arts, commerce streams, but they can take subjects of their choice. Someone will take mathematics with music, someone may take physics with psychology, someone may learn chemistry with maybe dance, something like this. These are all possibilities which will emerge in the last 4 years. That means our entrance to the higher education will be based on much more liberal type of education in those last 4 years, with variety of subjects being taken by students. There could be some mandatory subjects, because we all want students who complete their 12th grade, that means who complete their 15 years of education, must be proficient in few things. At least they must be very well in terms of reading, writing skills, in terms of basic mathematics. You must also know computer programming. You must also know the skill of teamwork. All of that is developed during these formative years. Along with that, expertise in some subjects of the choice of the student. We talked about choice-based credit system in UGC and in many of the universities and IITs, and something like that happening right at the stage of 14 years is going to be much more, not only informative, much more what we call empowering for such students to take care of their interests, explore what they can do better. That is the very important thing. And then it also talks about equitable and inclusive education. That means schools and colleges should be started in remote places, and setting of standards. What is the outcome that is to be achieved at different stages, after 5 years, after 3 years, after 3 years, and after 4 years. That means all those vocational skills one has acquired will create some kind of an employability at the end of that 15 years of education. And they would have got flavor of many of the skills which are existing. And that is very, very significant. And they can choose their subjects later based on what they have been keen in learning. That is what is this school education all about. And this is very fundamental and important, and which will create better quality graduates when they come into higher education system. Higher education has, as I said, many chapters devoted to higher education, because that is the crux of the policy. It starts with quality universities and colleges. It means very fact that it mentions about this word quality universities and colleges. We are aware that most of the colleges and universities are not up to the quality mark. Many times we reflect and say that even our best of the institutions like IITs, IISc do not appear in the global top 100 ranks. Maybe we appear somewhere in 200, 300. Whether we should get into those rankings or not is a different issue. But nevertheless, we are not recognized at the same level as some of those universities abroad is a fact. And therefore, how do we improve the quality of these universities and colleges? A chapter is devoted to this aspect. It has linkages with some other later chapters as well. And that's why I stop at this and then move on and then come back to this as and when it is required. Then comes the institutional restructuring and consolidation. I think this word is very important, restructuring. The reason is we had a cow committee which was established by Minister of Education in 2014, which went into the functioning of AICTE itself. But although it was for technical education, it dealt into various aspects of higher education. And it mentioned there that out of all the countries of the world, the 4 countries in the subcontinent, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka are the only countries where there is a system of affiliation of colleges to the universities, the state university. And this has become unwieldy. There are universities where there are 600 colleges affiliated, 400 colleges affiliated of all domains. And then the university, instead of conducting itself for doing research or imparting higher quality education, they are bogged down by doing examination, admission, examination, admission. That means it has become like a board, 10 standard board, 12 standard board. What all they do, the universities have started doing the same function. Although university by name itself is supposed to be universal, that means having multidisciplinary education, lot of activities of research happening at higher level. It is not happening in most universities, and that's why quality of universities is poor, and they are all affiliated or affiliating type universities, the state universities. And these colleges may be government or private, they have no choice but to go by the curriculum prescribed by the university with no autonomy to most of these colleges. And therefore, it becomes a common lowest denominator. The quality of the courses, the content is always kept at such a low level that it is catering to all the colleges in that university. There may be 500, 600 of them. And that's why quality has never improved. And that's why there is an absolute need for restructuring and consolidation of both colleges and universities. Universities should become vibrant in terms of conducting high quality research. And the colleges should be, even if they are only degree awarding, high quality education of the need of the society, need of the industry has to be given to the students, the stakeholders. And that's why freedom or autonomy to devise their own curriculum as per the regional requirements, as per the requirement of the surroundings, as per the requirement of the vision and mission of the college. This freedom is required for the colleges, moving away from the affiliation system. Even if they are in the beginning affiliated, the autonomy should be given for all these activities, which are akin to the activities of the university, of that of framing of the curriculum, teaching learning process. What is the best effective way of teaching learning has to be decided by the college and its faculty, and not directed by the university or somebody outside. And then students, based on their interest, they must be able to choose the subjects, and which we talked about as choice-based credit system. And then the question paper setting, the evaluation, and understanding the student and the needs of the students is a role that teachers have to play. And that's why the institutional restructuring in terms of giving full autonomy to all the institutions over the next 15 years and consolidation is important. And when all of them become degree awarding institutions, they cannot be of so small size. Otherwise, the overheads will be so large that the fee to be charged will become higher, which is also not sustainable. And therefore, while we are consolidating, it is also stated that all institutions should become of the size of 3,000 to 4,000 minimum and beyond. And also the next point which chapter talks about is holistic and multidisciplinary education. That means all the existing institutions should gradually change themselves from unidimensional or unidisciplinary to multidisciplinary. Professor Ram Gopal Rao in the beginning rightly mentioned that IITs have started this process long ago, and that process is continuing. And all the new departments, whether it is design or whether it is the policy, they are all holistic, they are all multidisciplinary in nature. You require input of engineering, you require input of law, you require social science input in such disciplines and departments. And this is what happens in the society outside. After one graduates and gets into a job or wants to start one's own entrepreneurial journey, the life outside is always multidisciplinary. Nothing is single discipline oriented program or course which is going to be useful. And that's why holistic and multidisciplinary education is the next topic which has been listed here. Next one is an optimal learning environment. This is a very complex subject. When we talk about learning environment, every student has a different learning style. Some students will learn by being in the classroom through lectures, they understand better. Some others through tutorials. you make them do some task, problem solving, etc. For some others, you take them to the lab or workshop, show them the physical activity, and then they will realize, understand. Some others through augmented reality, virtual reality, which is the order of the day today, or some others by going for internship and learning by doing some projects. And that's why we are calling some course curricula where project-based learning, problem-based learning, these are all terminologies which have been emerging. So the right kind of learning environment for every student is very important, and therefore the role of the teacher, I'll again come back when we come to teacher education, that identifying what type of learning is suitable for a particular set of students, and then how do we impart it. I think that is the optimal learning environment. Secondly, why should they learn all the subjects from the teachers or faculty of the same institution where they have taken admission? Maybe they must be given freedom to even take courses from outside. I think that is what is optimal learning environment, provide all kind of support system that is necessary and required. The next one is the motivated, energized, and capable faculty. Once again, the words are very, very powerful and important. First thing first, the faculty must be capable. Those who have entered into the system of teaching profession must be able to really deliver what they are meant for. And that's why that capability or capacity is required. And if it is not there, we need to develop it. When they have taken this as a profession, there is no choice, but you have to learn the lessons. Then you have to be motivated. If you yourself are not motivated, you are not energized yourself, you will not be transmitting that motivation and energy to your students. And that's why this is very significant and important to get our faculty on board in a manner that the selection is, first of all, the best quality selection, that is capability wise. You energize them, motivate them, providing a lot of incentives as are required in terms of providing facilities for research and many other things. Thereby, their motivation level will never go down, because they have to in turn motivate others. And that is very, very important factor which has been realized by the policy, and this separate chapter has been given for faculty capability development. We talked about inclusion and equity earlier also. Much more broader one in terms of this equity and inclusion. It is not only in terms of diversity, what we call male and female. It is also in terms of Divyangjans or PWD. It's also in terms of people from tribal areas, people who are physically challenged, and some of them who are very bright children. Inclusion includes those people also. They get bored in a normal classroom because they can understand very quickly and they want to go faster. Do we have provision for that? So on one side, weaker students, maybe PWD or weaker sections of the society who had first generation education, therefore at the family level there is no background and therefore they are little slow. So how do we take care of them on one side, and how bright students or those who are disadvantaged in terms of physical disabilities, both mental abilities also sometimes, how do we take care of them and include them? This is a very broad chapter of equity and inclusion which we have to take care of. And I have already talked about teacher education, which is fundamental when we talk about capable faculty. And there are certain elements about what we need to do in teacher education, which will come a little later. The higher education further also has the part of vocational education. So we need our higher education to be taking care of not just theoretical subjects, but skill-oriented subjects, so that our students, when they graduate, should have some expertise in some domain, whereby they will not only become employable on one side, some of them may become entrepreneurial and create their own startups. So how we can reimagine vocational education to be integrated with the general higher education is what is talked about here. And then the next important thing which Ram Gopal Rao ji was also talking about is looking for this National Research Foundation, which is very important in catalyzing high quality academic research. And it is not just in science, technology, but also in the field of medicine, in the field of law, agriculture, social sciences, humanities. In all the fields, we need to do high quality academic research, and they are all connected. And this connecting the dots is what comes through what we call multidisciplinary education. On a similar campus elsewhere in the world, we find that they have all disciplines in one umbrella, and therefore students have a choice of just moving around, either taking courses or taking a project which is multidisciplinary in nature, or mix with students of other disciplines in a canteen or library and have chat discussion, and thereby increasing the width of ourselves, which will also give impetus to the high quality academic research. And therefore National Research Foundation is very significant and important. Already rupees 50,000 crore is earmarked for the next 5 years by the finance minister in the last year's budget. But the nuances of how to invite applications, what type of focus areas are to be taken into account, maybe different other bodies like Department of Science and Technology, DBT, Ministry of Education, their inputs are important in order to decide national priorities. We also talk about today, we are great nation in terms of our software industry, but what about our hardware industry? Hardcore electronics is one thing which we have missed the bus. Can we come back into the game? And for that, what kind of quality academic research is required in our higher education institutions, and accordingly funding patterns are to be decided, is the part of the job of the NRF. And I'm sure very soon things will be moving out or rolled out. Transforming a regulatory system is another very important area touched upon by the new education policy. We have today several regulatory bodies. Of course, as far as IITs are concerned, or now even IIMs are concerned, or NITs are concerned, they are not regulated by any particular organization except funding which comes from the ministry directly. There are other colleges and universities who are governed by multiple regulatory bodies. There are as many as 17 regulatory bodies in our country. A major ones which many of the institutions in technical domain get affected are those of my own organization, AICTE, to which I represent, University Grants Commission. We have NCT, National Commission for Technical Teachers Education. We also have the Pharmacy Council of India, the Council of Architecture, and so on. So I think why so many regulatory bodies? If the college or the university is to become multidisciplinary and may have more than 5, 6, 7 of these kind of different education programs under one umbrella, if there are different bodies going and checking and inspecting, the whole year round, the educational institution will only be dealing with the regulatory bodies and trying to satisfy if A is satisfied, B is not satisfied because their requirements are different in terms of land, quantity, in terms of build space, in terms of laboratories. So there will be cross functioning of all of this, and therefore the colleges get affected, universities get affected. So how we can overcome this is by creating a single regulatory body called HECI, Higher Education Commission of India, in place of all these bodies, with 4 verticals, with clear mandate for autonomous functioning in 4 different domains. One is the same one which I talked about, regulatory function, NHERC, National Higher Education Regulatory Council, which will take care of whether you have any type of program under one umbrella that will be tested, inspected, and you will get the permission to run all those programs. And one famous statement in the policy document is the regulations must be light but tight. That means the more focus and emphasis on technology, focus on self-declaration, self-disclosure, and then giving permission. If someone is giving fake information, only then the tightness will come and penal action will come from the regulatory body. I think very simple, very way it is put is, if an institution or an organization wants to start the programs, if they have all the wherewithal that as is required, as specified by the regulatory body, they will simply declare that we do have everything in terms of building, in terms of land, in terms of what all laboratories, workshops are required, faculty requirements, support staff requirement, and I'm going to run this program. And they must be given full freedom to do that. But they have claimed, whatever they have claimed, they should put it transparently on their website. And if any stakeholders, be it their own student, faculty, or outside, industry or someone else who notices that information given here is fake information or half-truth information. And if there is a complaint received by the regulatory body, NHERC, then there will be inspection. And then if it is found to be a correct complaint, in that case, very lethal punishment could be awarded to that particular institute, including closing of the institution because of fake information and cheating of the students being done by that institution. I think that is what is light but tight. National Accreditation Council, umbrella body for accreditation, which is important because quality can be tested only when it is being operated. NHERC, the regulatory body, will give approval for the program, but what is to be done, how it is being done, is tested by the National Accreditation Council in terms of quality parameters. And if you are doing well, you will get better and better, higher and higher autonomy. Then comes the Higher Education Grants Council. Today we have all bodies trying to give their own perception about grants. There are agencies like DST, DBT, which is from Science Technology Department, whereas from Education Department, MHRD, now MOE also gives its own funding. Funding also available from AICTE, UGC, etc. So this is all going to be consolidated in the one umbrella called HEGC. Then comes the General Education Council, which gives the standards to be followed for a particular domain of education. If you have to become a commerce graduate, BCom graduate, what is the outcome that is to be achieved in terms of capabilities of a commerce graduate? This has to be defined by that some committee, and this should be taken care of in terms of the support infrastructure that is required by NHERC, and whether after having got all that infrastructure, whether it is being used correctly or not will be checked by the Accreditation Council. And if you are doing all well, more and more funding can be given for such good institutions by HEGC. I think there is a strong relationship between these four verticals of the HECI on one side and independent functions for each one of them. As far as engineering is concerned, there would be requirement of the classroom, the laboratory, workshop, the number of credits that is to be earned. The general standard will be defined by this General Education Council vertical, which may have sub-verticals within that, and they will give all this requirement. The last one, the important thing is effective governance and leadership. We have all found that we lack leadership in our higher education institutions. There are several problems in different institutions, strikes, etc. So how effective governance, transparent governance, and with good leadership. We already have a few examples of training of faculty, but anyway, this is also one of the important key areas. Then comes the professional education. This policy has kept away two professions of law and medicine from the ambit of this, but all other professions must be under the umbrella of the new education policy is what is stated. But there has been a rising demand from even the medical colleges as well as law colleges that they must also be included, although the policy itself has not said. Of course, other professional education, be it management, be it engineering, architecture, pharmacy, they are all part of this system anyway. So their role, how they can effectively play the role for societal development is all mentioned. Then comes the adult education. Those who have missed out on education, how do we support them? And more importantly, lifelong learning. That means the technologies which are there today will not be existing about 5 years down the line, and how our students will be learners by themselves, learning to learn and lifelong learning. These philosophies are to be embedded where they are still in the education domain, and how we can evolve lifelong learning principle philosophy is what is stated here. This is very important. Next one is about promotion of Indian languages, arts and culture, and a division of to be set up as Indian knowledge system, which was already set up in fact prior to even the policy came into existence. But there is a committee which has been constituted for Indian languages, take care of all the languages. Some of the languages unfortunately are dying. How do we keep them live? The culture, the arts. We all talked about 64 kalas in our system. And these are all variety, employable skills to artistic skills. How promoting them is so important in a vibrant society, and culture is what is to be taken care of by this promotion of Indian language, arts and culture. I will come back to Indian languages a little while later in technical education. Technology use and integration. There is a support for giving all variety of technology support for our institutions, and the committee called as NET, National Educational Technology Forum, to be established, manned by some eminent person and then several members who will keep on advising institutions on what type of technology to be used for in education, in skilling, in creating a new generation of citizens who will be empowered citizens, and integration of all existing platforms of technology, so that at one go, people will be able to get all the choices that they have under their umbrella. Then comes the online and digital education, equitable use of technology. The gross enrollment ratio, which today stands at 27%, is imagined to increase to 50% by 2035. So in the next 15 years, we have to more than double the number of students who are in higher education system. Well, the population also is increasing, and the percentage is going to be doubled. And therefore, huge number of students, about 10 crore, 100 million of them will be in higher education sector itself. How do we cater to them? Through brick and mortar of type of universities and colleges. There is a limitation on the land, on the infrastructure requirement, the cost involved, and therefore how we make use of online and digital education effectively to the extent possible, thereby the costs are reduced. And this is another area which has been there in the part of this. And for making it happen, it talks about implementation strategy, financing, how education must be having 6% of the gross GDP, budget provision, strengthening of Central Advisory Board of Education from primary school to the high school to higher education, and how all the societies, various elements get integrated. Parents, the students, our industry, society, the governance, government, everyone together. These are issues which one has to handle. So this was in nutshell the policy. Now I'll slowly move on to few things which have been already implemented quickly, and then leave the floor open. So as far as access, equity, inclusion is concerned, AICTE itself announced that we will allow engineering courses to be offered in regional languages or Indian languages. And 10 states, 6 languages, and 19 colleges came forward. And they are Hindi, Tamil, Kannada, Telugu, Marathi, and Bengali. And of course, Odia, Punjabi, and Gujarati are in the pipeline. They said they will start from the next year. So at least 9 languages. Many others may follow suit. But one of the challenges was the material to be made available to students and faculty for teaching in the mother tongue. And therefore, translation work of the MOOC courses that are available on the SWAYAM platform into Indian languages had begun earlier in 8 languages. Now we have expanded to 12 languages. So any major language which wants to start program in engineering or in any higher level, they will have the course material getting translated from English into those languages. And already, whether it is arts, commerce, science, and major disciplines are made available in 13 languages on the MOOCs, and in 12 languages in engineering curriculum and management curriculum. AICTE itself, with the use of our college-going students who were called in as interns, developed an AI-based translation tool. And accuracy of this is 75 to 80%. In some respects, better than even what Google does or what Microsoft does. Well, our tool also translates the books, including the pictures, figures, equations. They also get it translated, which does not happen in any other source which is available today. And of course, the audio also into the text into audio, all of those facilities are provided in this AI translation tool, along with the backend support, whereby the remaining 20-25% inaccuracy is to be corrected by the faculty members who are passionate in doing this on a small honorarium which we provide. And they will use this platform for correcting those small nuances which are missed out by the auto translation tool. And of course, they have to be experts in that subject as well as the language. With that criteria, we have been doing. Already JEE and NEET is being conducted in 13 languages. We are empowering students from such rural areas, remote areas to write entrance exam, and now also getting their higher education also in their regional language. The Central University entrance exam is also going to be in 13 languages. So I think we are gradually moving into supporting all variety of languages in our higher education system. Access, equity, inclusion. I have already narrated about online and ODL program is the only way for increasing our gross enrollment ratio from 27% to 50%, and therefore regulations needed to be revised. They are under revision. They will be announced, and many other institutions which are not today now giving online ODL programs will start giving it. Regulations for using our MOOC platform, SWAYAM courses, which UGC AICTE had earlier permitted to 20%. In the VUCA world, when we have realized during pandemic that online is also feasible, we have increased this percentage to 40%. Guidelines for equitable access to quality education for socially disadvantaged sections of the society through bridge courses is also part of that, which is already issued. Guidelines, committees for accessible education to PWD and SLDs, dyslexic children was done by AICTE. By the way, PWD Education Committee was headed by Professor Balkrishnan from IIT Delhi. And for SLDs, special learning disabilities and dyslexic children, it was Partha Chakravarti, former director of IIT Kharagpur. And we are implementing that in right earnest. Further, there are barriers of economic viability as well as in terms of capability of paying fees. And therefore, large number of scholarships and fellowships for such disadvantaged sections of the society are being given by the government from time to time. State governments are also giving, central government is giving. I hope access equity is being taken care of. Also, there are guidelines for earn while learn. So some of the students whose income is in the borderline, they will not fit into getting scholarship. They must be in a position to do some earning while learning and support their education by themselves. Outreach programs are ongoing, and IIT PAL to be remodeled into a SWAYAM so that computation SWAYAM will be there. And we all know that JEE is so tough an examination. So unless students who cannot afford to go to the coaching classes, we support them through means of IIT PAL, SWAYAM Prabha or SWAYAM channel, we will not be able to support access equity. And that's why this is also taken care of. Continuing further, I have already talked about pedagogical aspects for Divyangjans and SLDs. It is not just physical access in terms of movement in the campus, but more important, learning tools which are required for maybe hearing impaired or the visually challenged. All those kind of technological interventions for supporting access to education is important. And these committees, which I narrated earlier, have given concrete guidelines and measures, and we are implementing. Empowerment for women in higher education. I think we have reached more than 50% the gender ratio in higher education, but in some domains we are still not up to the mark, maybe in engineering and some domains, and we need to expand that base. Grievance redressal and monitoring of the harassment cases or many other issues which are dealt with in the colleges and universities through ombudsman, they are all in place for supporting students. Another area is the counseling. Many students do not know what to do at what stage. So a lot of psychosocial well-being of the students is to be taken care of. More so in the pandemic time, we have realized that. So these systems are also in place. I think many IITs have one software whatever product, DOST, which is used by many students for counseling. So there are many other platforms which are available and many can be made use of. Facilitating outstanding sports persons to attain academic qualification. This is one of those things which is mentioned in the policy, more so by the Prime Minister when our sportsmen returned from Olympics, that we must support them. I think we need to do that. As far as quality is concerned, multidisciplinary holistic education, I have narrated earlier, but a framework is required. National Higher Education Qualification Framework is under preparation for movement of students from one domain to the other domain. How do we empower them? That framework will be in place in maybe 5-6 months' time and will be released. All the institutions can adopt it. Development of learning outcome-based curriculum. See, framework of the curriculum is based on outcomes to be achieved. As I said, there is a body called, one of those verticals in the Higher Education Commission of India is the General Education Council. It gives what are the outcomes to be achieved, and for that to achieve, what is the framework of curriculum? And in terms of both experiential learning, theoretical learning, mobility, employability is to be taken care of. All institutions should become multidisciplinary, not easy. There are 40,000 odd institutions, 10,000 standalone institutions. So how these 50,000 colleges which are there can become either universities or degree awarding with large size of 4,000, 5,000 is a challenge. And the time required is more than 10 to 15 years. But we have to start baby steps now so that we can achieve the target at the end of some 15 years' time. Provision of offering general stream programs in technical institutions. That's what makes it holistic multidisciplinary. Guidelines on value education and life skills. These guidelines are issued both by UGC and AICTE. We conduct a program called Universal Human Values continuously over a period of last 2.5 years, training more than 50,000 odd faculty members. And this is very empowering for them. The important point which was touched upon by Professor Ram Gopal Rao also in the beginning is about academic bank of credits, multiple exit, multiple entry. It is very easy to say, but difficult to implement. Where it also says that at the end of every year, students should be allowed to go out, exit, with some certificate or a diploma. But will it be useful? I think we will have to do a lot of brainstorming in order that after he has learned some common subjects of the first year or second year, directly he may not be employable. But can we give an exit bridge courses so that the subjects in which he has found interest or in which that particular student has an attribute or an attitude for doing good work in that area, can we give a couple of bridge courses to make him perfect in that and then send him out with a certificate? Then he will become useful to himself and society and for the industry. So this is as far as exit is concerned. The challenges of entry is when I said that last 4 years of the school education are the open-ended and they can take maths and music without taking physics or chemistry. If they want to enter engineering, stopping the door is not the solution, opening the window of opportunity, but they must study physics and chemistry. Without that, they cannot become engineers. So how do we do it? And that's why input bridge courses, exit bridge courses. I think both exit and entry, there is a requirement of bridge courses. And whatever you have done, and if you exit, that has to be recorded in your bank account, which is an academic bank of credits. And if you come back to education, because of some difficulty you had gone out and want to come in, we must provide that opportunity. And these regulations, guidelines are already in place. The only institutions who are permitted today are category 1 institutions with high accreditation rating. Tomorrow, the same thing may be required to be done at lower level, but naturally an IIT may not accept the credits earned from some substandard university or college. So with whom you can have an engagement is to be decided by the respective institutions, academic senate or council. So therefore, there are a lot of work that will go behind the scene till we really give them certificate, diploma, or take the credits of another institution into our fold and allow them. Of course, MOOC platform we are allowing because it's all done by the very good teachers from best institutions in the country. But when we open it to all the institutions, there are challenges. We must address them. I have already talked about National Research Foundation. Availing grants from this is very important for developing the research culture. There is also talk about glue grant, cluster grant. There are cities in India where there are multiple institutions of different domains, science, engineering, medicine, etc., law. How can we come together and form a cluster and get a glue grant? That's also going on. Innovation, we started Atal Innovation Rankings 3 years back. Many institutions have set up their innovation councils. The labs for idea development is supported by AICTE. Patent application is supported. Creating startups is being supported. All for in quality education, innovation is important. Along with that, internationalization is important. There is a talk about setting up of foreign universities in India, but our Indian institutions setting up campuses abroad also is there. Therefore, There are guidelines for internationalization. Till such time formal physical systems come into place, at least we have this joint PhD program which the director talked about. Similarly, twinning programs, joint programs, dual degree programs. I think scope is unlimited. We may not have formal campus of some foreign university in India as on today, but we can have collaboration with them to have this twinning and joint programs and create this global citizenship of education. I've already stated about Indian knowledge system, the importance that the policy has given to promote interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary research in even Indian knowledge system. We have to unearth all that great thing that was done in the past, make it relevant to today, and also continue research, popularize the work that is being done. Otherwise, we will not be ourselves be confident of our own culture, our own traditions, our own scientific investigation that was done thousands of years ago and created the knowledge base. The science, in fact, mathematics, in fact, emanated from India and went to the West, and they developed it further. We are not giving less importance to them, but we must be proud that we started this journey. And creation of knowledge was one of our great perspectives. And similarly, the knowledge of tribal arts in terms of, especially in medicine, is going to be very important, because despite Ayurveda being there, there are some tribal areas where they know which plants will be used for treating what kind of diseases or the wounds that are created. And we must make use of documentation of this and make use of it. As far as faculty development is concerned, it talks about pedagogical approaches, different modules which AICTE has created for mandatory certification of faculty. There are 8 modules. Many IIT faculty have helped us in creating these modules, and I'm sure for promotion also this will be implemented. Regulations are in place for service conditions of the faculty, which is important for their growth. We have Atal Academy, through which a lot of emerging areas like AI, IoT, machine learning, deep learning, robotics, augmented reality, cloud computing, cyber security, blockchain, these are all rolled out as Atal Academy 1 week faculty development programs involving all best institutions, not only in India, but abroad. Thankfully, COVID has helped us to create online FDPs where faculty from many other countries have also participated. We have leadership development. Both IITs and IIMs were doing it as LEAP. And in AICTE, we have UK-India Education Research Initiative, under which also we have been doing it. So I think faculty empowerment, leadership development is an important area which is to be taken care of. I talked about NETF, that is National Educational Technology Forum, and also NDR, that is National Digital Educational Architecture. We already have started with NAD, National Academic Depository, where entire certificate is deposited. Now we are talking about Academic Bank of Credits. We are talking about internship. We are talking about AI-based learning of students. We are also talking about taking SWAYAM courses. How do we integrate all these platforms, even virtual labs, which are already in existence for quite some time? And we are talking about not just online ODL education, but even in a regular face-to-face mode education, how blend can be obtained. Blended learning where part of the courses will be online, part of the courses will be in the physical space. And for all of this, integration of technology is very significant and important empowering tool. And policy has given direction for this, and a committee has been already set up under the leadership of founder of Infosys, Shibu Lal, and the committee is working on what all required to be done in order to create an excellent NDR structure. Skilling of youth and future readiness is simply cannot be wished away. We have internship portal created by AICTE. There is embedded in both apprenticeship and internship program. Integration of the skills and higher education is already in place. University industry, not linkages, but also partnerships and a lot of activities together is also on the cards. Many institutions are doing, many others who are not doing need to do it. And last and but most important thing is governance. How the legislation of Higher Education Commission of India will come in is one part, but more important at institution level, the board of governors, the autonomy, the freedom that they should enjoy, the regulations which will empower them, they are all part of this HECI. And I'm hoping that very soon when it comes, And not only IITs who are already enjoying the autonomy will continue to enjoy autonomy, but many other institutions will fall in the same bracket and try to excel. And that's why there is also a need that some of these excellent institutions should do hand-holding, mentoring of tier 2, tier 3 colleges and universities. Thereby, through the mentorship program also, we develop other institutions to excel. And excellence is both competitive as well as cooperative. And that is what is required to be done. We also are talking about one nation, one data. That means all the data of all the higher education institutions must be available at one place, both internally as well as externally. We are talking about Study in India program, inviting students from abroad to study in Indian institutions, but there is no one single standard portal where information about all good institutions is available. How do we create that is also another area which is ongoing. Compliance burden is to be reduced. That's what the government is often talking about. Regulatory compliance burden has to be reduced. Ease of doing business has to be improved. And all of that in the regulatory process, whereby good solutions will emerge through the use of technology, which I mentioned in the NETF in the previous slide. So I have done with all that what is possible through the new education policy. It is highly empowering. It is transformative. It is game-changing, provided we all take cue from all those facets which are empowering and build them up in our respective institutions. And where we have difficulties, we share our best practices with each other. And then together we will do it. Together we can win it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Sahasrabudhe, for walking us through the main features of NEP 2020 document. There are quite a few questions, and as I read them, as I go through them, I realize that all these questions have already been addressed in your talk, but I guess what the audience wants is a little bit of elaboration, and especially in terms of execution. So I'm going to take a few questions. The first question is more of a suggestion, and it says that, is there a possibility that sign language could also be taught to our school kids so that we may also incorporate or co-opt that particular community in our system right from the very beginning? And this is more to do with the languages anyway we're talking about, and the fact that all languages should be given equal space and time in our curriculum.
No, I think I fully agree with you. It's not only that as a subject one can learn sign language, but how we can also engage with the AI-based tool, which we are talking about, translation into our other Indian languages. Why can't we translate into sign language as well? So we will have to have a directory of all the words and possible formation of sentences in a sign language. We all see on the television news something similar. Some persons, whatever movements that they make with the hands and the fingers have to be replicated by using an AI tool for every word and sentence, and we can communicate so that people with hearing disability can be empowered in terms of sign language.
Yeah, thank you. So you've already taken the question or the the issue of counseling students, and there's a question here related to that, which is where the question is that sometimes subjects will overshadow others. I mean, some disciplines will overshadow other disciplines. How do we take care of that problem? So even if we say that there can be a lot of intermingling of courses, and the choices can be much more flexible, yet some kind of counseling is needed. So any thoughts, any further thoughts on that? How to counsel students, both at the school level or also at the level of higher education?
No, I think more than our students, we need to counsel our parents, because it is actually the parents who thrust their children into some education because they have their interest in that sector. I didn't become engineer, at least my son should become an engineer. Or I didn't become doctor, I couldn't become, so I want my son to become a doctor. I think this is what is creating more problems than the student. Students today are quite well aware of what is desired, what is their interest. And those parents who give full freedom for students to even take arts, to take music, they have been doing pretty well in life. I think therefore, when we are talking about counseling, I think certainly counseling of students is required, because we find sometimes suicides happening in educational institutions at young age of 20, 21, someone dying is not a good sign. And therefore counseling is important. But more important is in the society. How do we create that awareness that if you want to do well in life, you need not do a particular course, but you can do well anywhere, any subject. And this is what has to be continuous process. It may not be possible overnight, but I think we must all attempt to do that as teachers, as educators.
Right. I think the next question is also about somehow related to the mindset issue. So the admission to IITs and NITs is through highly competitive exams. And the question here is whether some kind of, the proposed multiple exit entry system could also be directed towards the IITs and NITs, for which there is a rush. And we enable all students from all walks of life to get into these institutions.
Yeah, I think it's possible. See, some student who after the grade 10 presently, and subsequently, I don't know, in the last 4-year system of 5334, if they have come to a diploma program and they do their diploma of 3 years duration, there is no entry into an IIT at all. We take them only after the 12th grade science. So why can't we have some kind of an entry for even those who have done diploma or those who have done BSc or even probably BA economics into some programs? I think there is a possibility of entry into different domains, which each IIT, each Senate has to debate, discuss, and decide what is feasible for their institution and then adopt it. The second part is, even if physically admitting so many students is not possible because of infrastructure issues in terms of hostels, in terms of classrooms, laboratories, there are many programs where you don't require students to come into the campus, but they can be offered in an online mode. I am seeing IIT Madras has already started a program on AI and data science as an online degree program. Same is the case with Indian Institute of Science, which has started a program even in VLSI design, where you require some kind of a software or some engagement, some classes to be held online. And many more students who aspired to get into IIT could not get in because of the tough JEE examination can make their way. I think these are all innovations. Each institution can do their own bit and can come forward for this. Similarly, exit. When I remember in an IIT council meeting, when exit came, there were a lot of debate, discussion on that. But if a student is somehow not able to manage, and he made it because of coaching, he came into an IIT system, not able to complete. Instead of not having anything in hand, not a BTech degree in hand, can we give a BSc and send him out? Was one of those issues which was debated. I think multiple entry, multiple exit has all these kind of possible innovations possible. Please do it. That's all I can say.
Right. So there is a concern that comes from one of our someone in the audience. He says there's some of these aspects or some of these focus areas are mentioned in the NEP 2020 document, but how does one revive other dying branches? For example, in computer science, when the focus is so much on coding. So is that something on which policymakers have already started giving some thought, so that's to make sure that other branches of the discipline on which one aspect is being centered on or focused on, the other branches don't die off?
No, I think there is an importance. Soon after something happens, we realize, then we again start changing. So that's why what we have done as a regulator is, if someone wants to change the number of seats available in, say, or the civil, mechanical engineering, chemistry, chemical engineering, all these disciplines, we are not allowing them to close, but partially reduce the seats, and you can increase the seats where there is a current demand. This demand keeps fluctuating and changing. 5 years down the line, there may be huge shortage of civil engineers if you are all closing down civil engineering. And therefore, it is not just in engineering discipline, but it's the same case with humanities and social sciences too. We require people with psychology background, sociology background, economics background, statistics background. No, not everyone rushing to computer science and IT will serve the purpose. We are aware of it, but at the same time, because currently more jobs are available in a particular domain, what we are promoting is, you have a major in your engineering discipline, but you can have a minor degree with additional 18 credits in AI, in data science, in augmented reality, in blockchain. So thereby you will get both inputs of a branch of engineering, along with that some expertise in some other area where you can have the real multidisciplinarity, make applications for agriculture, healthcare, entrepreneurship, transportation, many other areas. I think Professor Grover wants to
Yeah.
ask a
Professor
question.
Grover? Professor Grover, you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
We'll unmute you from here.
No. Yeah.
Can you speak?
Thank you, Professor Sahasrabudhe, for a very comprehensive presentation of what ought to happen in next few years. All that looks realistic for universities and institutions in the private sector. The state sector, particularly the state universities and the state institutions, today face the problem of financial sustenance. So if the state institutions, if they are unable to sustain paying salaries to their teachers and modernize their labs, because which is essential for implementing all these things, then for a very large fraction of students studying in the state institutions, the NEP would not make any difference. So I think there should be a very realistic assessment of the financial state of the state institutions, universities, as well as technical colleges. And there should be some guidelines on how this sustenance would be maintained over next 20-25 years. As you rightly said, this NEP came after long deliberations. See, we had after 84, if it took 35 odd years, then it has to sustain also for next 35 odd years. This is the time scale over which the policies evolve till they get reassessed. So how do we maintain the sustenance, financial sustenance of a large fraction of our institutions? NEP is silent about it. And I think the time has come that we address these questions without losing any more time. So what are your thoughts in that direction?
Sir, I don't agree any more than what you have already stated. This is a very important aspect. One part of the policy also talks about different ways what we can do. Number one, increasing the budgetary provision in the education sector, which has been talked about for a long time, is still not happening. We are only gradually increasing by some 0.2%, 0.3%, but not by quantum jump. The kind of backlog that is there, probably even 6% of the national budget would not be enough if we have to catch up. Maybe for some years we may have to have more, then probably reduce to 6%, which is a necessity in a standstill mode. This is one part. But otherwise, yesterday or day of yesterday itself, there was a news item which said the top some 80 odd companies of India who are very, very, very rich, they can take care of the entire education budget of India for the next 70 years. So therefore, the CSR as well as philanthropy from industry is also to be exploited. It is not that they want only good quality products as graduates to employ, but also they have to create them. And what is your role? You are making huge profits. Why can't you contribute some part of it? Government also should do it. There is a part which the industry should do. And some of these institutions who are quite well off in terms of their good alumni strength should also bank upon alumni. And lastly, very small institutions where their capability is limited, maybe they must be provide easy bank loan so that their requirement, immediate requirement will be taken care of. And as National Research Foundation says, not only private, government, anyone, everyone who is having good capable faculty. They must be provided support for research. They can develop their labs. I think there are multi-pronged ways that we must address this particular issue. One cap fits for all will not happen. And wherever possible, there are people who can afford to pay a high fee for good quality education. They should pay it. Gas subsidy was asked to be left by people who can afford, so that poorer people will get the real gas subsidy which is required. Same way, education subsidy is not necessary for some people like us. Why can't we leave it and we will pay at the market rate what is required to be paid? But some others in the social sector where people cannot afford to give even school education, well, they must be provided this support. I think this is how we should go about. Well, our challenge is very big. We have huge population of students, and therefore simple solutions are not possible. We will have to evolve solutions, innovative.
Okay, so Professor Sahasrabudhe, thank you for answering the questions. There are many more observations and questions in the chat box, but unfortunately we can't take all of them. I will now hand over to Professor Ganguly for his closing remarks.
Let me thank Professor Anil Sahasrabudhe for his excellent talk and telling the nitty-gritties of NEP 2020 and the way forward, and a lot of interesting questions, clarified many of these things. And I must thank him for talking on the, input and exit bridge courses, which will be a challenge and which needs to be discussed. Then institutions, identifying relevant institutions if they need to transfer credits. That will be a point which institutions like to take credits from another institution of equivalent. Then about the glue grant, which comes to the clusters in different cities, city-based clusters, several such things, and also about the various organization of the, like the HECI, etc., to which different organizations will have to report in some manner. So many of these things were clarified, and I think further discussions will make things easier for all of us to understand how to implement these NEP 2020. So thank you, Professor Sahasrabudhe, for kindly of our Associate Dean of Outreach and New Initiatives, Professor Pritha Chandra, and especially she has been supported by Swagato from my office, Gaurav from Dean Academics Office, and Ram Lakhan from the Director's Office, and many others who have helped us organize. And also this is a very important program under our Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. So this is part of one of the very important initiatives which is being chaired by our Deputy Director Operations and Registrar. So I thank everybody, all the participants, and thank you, Professor Sahasrabudhe. Thank you again for being with us.
Thank
you
you
very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.